Hi guys, hope everyone is good. So we're on video 2 now, and we're going to talk about the business of songwriting. So one of the things we're going to talk about to start off with, and it can be a little bit dry, but I'm going to compact it as much as possible, is to talk about copyright. As we're going to be talking about copyright in respect of songwriting, we need to be thinking about one particular copyright, and that's the copyright associated with the lyrics and the music. So if we were to write a song today over Zoom, there is one main copyright that we're going to be focused on, and that would be the copyright associated with any music that's written, so the chords and any main lead melody parts, and the lyrics. Additionally, when we record that song, we need to be mindful of the fact that an additional copyright is also created at that point, which is the copyright of the recording of the song. Whilst I appreciate that quite a lot of you guys are likely to be writing your own songs and recording your own songs, today we're just going to focus on the copyright associated with the song. So I'm going to make some general suggestions that should be useful to you all in respect of your songwriting and your careers as songwriters. Arguably the most important thing is once you've worked with somebody else, so if you are in a co-write or in a collaboration, is that shortly after you've written that song is that you have a discussion with that person you're working with to determine splits, so i.e. what share of the song each of you are going to get. Ideally these splits would be written down in some capacity. Now that might be over Messenger or WhatsApp, or ideally over email or some form of professional communication. At this stage, I wouldn't advise that songwriters necessarily have a formal contract or anything that's particularly long-winded, but just a brief email or a brief WhatsApp between everybody involved in co-writing the song, just to agree that, for example, that the 3 people that wrote the song agreed to split what we call the publishing, so the songwriting, 3 ways, perhaps 33.3% times 3, so everybody would get a third of that song. Once you've agreed your splits, ideally the song would be registered with PRS. PRS are a collection society based in the UK that helps songwriters earn money from the performance of their songs. Typically many artists don't actually have this conversation because they find it a little awkward or a little difficult, but in my experience as somebody who's involved in working with songwriters and helping songwriters do publishing deals and also settling disputes between songwriters, it's much easier to have this conversation while everyone's in a good headspace and a song's been written and everyone's very positive about that outcome. So my advice is to make sure that you do have that conversation amongst your co-writers and collaborators with regards to the splits of the songwriting. So I thought it'd be useful to give you a couple of examples in relation to how songwriting splits might work. So if you're an artist, perhaps you're a vocalist and you also write your own top lines, as we call them, so your vocal melodies and your lyrics, and you work with a producer who perhaps has sent you an instrumental track and you're going to write a song over the top of that, whether they're in the room with you or whether that's something that you do at home. Perhaps whilst coronavirus is going on, that will be something you'll do in isolation. You'll work together over Zoom or Messenger or whatever platform it is that you like to work with. So at that point we have to discuss who owns what, who has what share of the song. Given that there are only yourself and another party involved in creating that song, and remember we're talking about the lyrics and the music here, not the recording, we have to consider who is going to get what. Now my advice in this scenario would typically be that if the producer has provided an instrumental recording, if you want to call it a beat, call it a beat. But if the producer has provided a beat for the songwriter to write a song over, typically what you do in that case is you would just split the songwriting 50-50. If we think about a scenario which is similar to that, in which a producer or a beat maker has provided an instrumental, so the melody and the chords are already there, and the vocalist has somebody help that individual maybe with their lyrics, or perhaps you're the vocalist and you're the lead vocalist and you have a guest MC that comes in and writes some lyrics for a verse, so there are 2 vocalists featuring on that. Typically what you do in that case is the producer would still take 50% of the songwriting, because without that instrumental there wouldn't be the ability to write the song, and the remaining 50% would be split between the 2 vocalists who have equally contributed to the lyric writing and the melody writing. To be clear, the situation would be that the producer has 50%, writer 1 on the vocals has 25%, and writer 2, who's working on the vocals, has 25% as well. A question that I get regularly asked is in relation to bands or artists that work collaboratively, often from the ground up. If you're a band and you go into a rehearsal room and no one has a preconceived idea for a song, and a song is just jammed in the room, everybody contributing equally where possible, what do we do then? So at that point, it might not be unfair to split the songwriting between all 4 band members. If all 4 band members have equally contributed to lyrics, melody, and arrangement of the song, then I would suggest that that's an equal split. However, in the scenario where one band member comes in with the chorus, and they have maybe the melody of the chorus, the chords, plus the vocal top line and the lyrics, then there is certainly an argument that that individual should be earning more royalties, more publishing share from the song. Again, without that chorus, the ability to have written the verses and perhaps the additional instrumentation and arrangement around that wouldn't have existed. So in that scenario, it wouldn't be unreasonable for that person who's come in with the chorus into that session to take more than just 25% if there were 4 people in the room. A final scenario that I'll mention that might be useful for some of you who are working collaboratively online. If a songwriter who is also able to write chords, melodies, ideas, sends to a producer a demo which includes chords, maybe some other melodies, maybe some drums, some bass parts, and, a top line melody, a verse, a chorus, they've effectively written the entire song because the melody and the lyrics are entirely there. Now, there isn't really an argument that that producer should really earn any of the publishing, any of the songwriting split there, because the producer has been provided with the entire song. Unless that producer adds significant additional melody, which has fundamentally changed the way that the song works, there really isn't an argument that that producer therefore should earn anything from the songwriting. The work really that the producer is doing is predominantly production. And when we typically refer to production, that's a different pot of money. That's no longer songwriting, that's money from the recording, so from the additional copyright that we mentioned at the start of this session. So as you can see, it can get quite complicated about who earns what, but it is important to think about it in respect of songwriting, particularly in terms of the chords and the melodies, and additionally the lyrics. So we've discussed how one might split songwriting shares, publishing shares, between co-writers and collaborators. Now we need to actually understand where the money is going to come from. Now, typically, in most of your cases, at the moment, that money is going to be generated from every time that song is used in a commercial capacity or in a performance capacity. So, at present, we're unable to go out and perform songs live in a bar or club for people to listen to. But typically, that is one of the main scenarios in which songwriters earn money from their songs. It's important to note that if you play other people's songs, you do not earn money from that because the song is not yours. Even though you may be there in a venue performing that song and perhaps even being paid to perform, the songwriting, any money that's generated from the publishing, from the song, is going to be paid to the original songwriter. In the scenario that you're playing original music, i.e. your own music that you've written or co-written with somebody else, that money will return to you as the songwriter or songwriters via an organisation that we touched on earlier called the PRS. To earn money from the PRS, you first need to be a signed up member to their service. At present, that's £100 per member, so £100 per songwriter. A question that I regularly get asked is, if I'm in a band, can one of us collect the money and the others not pay the £100? Unfortunately, with the PRS, all members need to be signed up who contributed to the song. Once you've signed up to PRS, that's not everything. Some people seem to think that it is, but it's not. You also need to register your work with PRS, which includes all of the people that co-wrote or wrote on that song, the name of the song and the time of the song. All of those details are very important to be registered with the work on PRS to ensure that the money flows back to you as the songwriter. Some final points to make about earning money as a songwriter from the PRS. It's important that you register any live performances that you play with their system. If you go and play at a venue in Manchester once coronavirus lifts and you're playing original work, PRS won't necessarily know that you've played at that venue, therefore you must submit a set list to them with the time, the date and any other information that you can provide. I also advise people to keep hold of any screenshots of any radio play that they receive. Now, it's worth noting that different radio stations pay different amounts of money for the broadcast of that song. For example, Radio 1 and Radio 2 pay a much, much higher rate than a small online radio station, perhaps such as NTS. Additionally, any radio play that you get should be logged and you should keep screenshots of that. Sometimes PRS won't always make the payment because they don't know that the play has taken place. So always keep screenshots of when you know your music's been played in case you need to raise this with the PRS later. I hope this video has been useful and you've learnt a bit more about the business of songwriting. The next video is going to be discussing the business of live music. So stay tuned for that one. I'll be back with you soon. Take care.